I guess I want to be honest, and I find it hard sometimes to be honest about some of the hard times, the tough times in the past. This climate crisis, climate change, climate catastrophe that is talked about so widespread has been really a feeling at different times of just existential crisis. It appears to be the most existential, serious issue of our time. And for at least the last 10 or 15 years, at least as long as I've been kind of conscious and awake, it doesn't seem like a lot has really been happening on this. I think it's a tough balancing act between some level of hope and optimism, but then also some level of reality and realism. And I guess, I want to be vulnerable about what the experience has been like for me. Record-breaking fires. I was in San Francisco at the time, back in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. And every year there was some sort of record-breaking fire happening somewhere in the region. Quite a few of them. The smoke from the fires would get into San Francisco and you wouldn't be able to see more than a few hundred meters, a few hundred yards. For those of you that don't know, yards and meters are very close. So, fun fact of the day. For those who want to learn a little bit about the imperial system or a little bit about the metric system, And I'm sitting there in my tall skyrise building doing my high-tech cybersecurity technology consulting. You feel like you're living in this dystopian situation because the sky is red, looks like you're on Mars. You shouldn't breathe the air outside, and you're actually safer in your office than you are at your home because your office has air filters and air conditioning to filter out these smoke pollutants. And actually kind of wishing that you had COVID masks to help a little bit with the pollution maybe, or a little bit with the smoke in the air. And that was a big reason why I decided that I wanted to quit my job, because I didn't feel like I could have any impact on probably the most critical, most serious existential issue of our day. And that was a big reason that then pushed me to go to Puerto Rico, because I wanted to help somehow. I wanted to do something. And the hurricanes, Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma that went through Puerto Rico, they made a huge impact. They destroyed so many people's lives, livelihoods, homes, prized possessions, or even took lives, right? And so I wanted to do something. And it was again more and more clear that these record-breaking hurricanes and record-breaking storms were due in large part more and more to rising temperatures and climate change. And as more and more sort of dominoes fell and collapsed in my life, like my dad passing away, I had a good friend at my old consulting company who just up in one day kind of disappeared. And then it seemed to point towards really burnout and overwork and just sadness, isolation, depression, and not being able to really express her feelings and express what was going on in the work environment and all the pressure and stress that they were putting on young people like us. And I think a lot of us thought that very likely there's a chance that she committed suicide. And then not too long after, big fires, hurricanes, Puerto Rico, being in Puerto Rico for a few months, and then my dad passed away. I surprisingly was able to keep hope for quite some time and stay optimistic. But a few years later, as more dominoes started to drop, my family kind of got into a lot of infighting and a little bit of a civil war, as some old cans of worms were reopened after my dad died. I had made a really good friend when I had started living in Europe, and he ended up passing away really suddenly, very unexpectedly, from just a surprise disease that showed up, and he passed away at 33. So around 2020 and between 2022, and then let's just throw in COVID, let's throw in Russia and Ukraine, let's throw in massive inflation, let's throw in a cost of living crisis. Then let's chuck in, for good measure, let's chuck in Israel and Palestine and Gaza. Let's chuck in environmental disasters also in Europe, droughts starting in Europe, or massive rainfalls and flooding in Europe. I started to lose hope. I really started to lose hope. I lost my optimism. People had always known me, and I had known myself as being quite positive and optimistic, and most of the time looking at the glass as half full and not half empty, looking at the bright side of things. But yeah, around somewhere between 2020 and 2022, 2023, I also started to really lose hope and lose any sort of faith that this was going to go well, that we had some sort of bright future ahead of us. And the political discourse in America and in Europe is very tense in the last years. It's very serious and very tense. And of course, that's necessary, and that's probably a good thing. We got to take things seriously, not make a joke out of things. But it's just very stressful. It's a very stressful environment to be in. You never get a chance to really breathe and relax. Yeah, I mean, ultimately for me, I went into, I'm sure like a lot of people, some level of borderline grief. Maybe it's like a mix of post and pre-grieving, and also just pre-grieving for what you think is going to come in the future with this doomerism. They call it doomsday doomerism. And just thinking, what does it matter anymore? Like, it seems like in a lot of ways we're all screwed. And I mean, of course, we've seen that things do get under control to some degree. And of course, I've been surprised as I've been out and about that the natural world still exists. It's so magical in a lot of these places. I mean, you can see it behind me. I don't know, in a lot of ways, I do hope, maybe call it dreaming, but I do hope that the planet is more resilient than we think. But I feel like it's important for me to share and to be open and honest and vulnerable. And maybe some of you can get something out of it, or can at least relate, and maybe it helps you feel not so alone. But I mean, I had a good time, and I still have bouts of it where there's just a sense of just grief, loss, sadness, little bouts of depression, maybe just feeling a little bit hopeless about the whole situation. And that really consumed me quite a bit in 2022 and 2023. And yeah, probably also a little bit of 2021. So I really needed to find a way to try and have some sort of impact, or try and make some meaning out of this, and try and even just do something for if not for others, also for myself, that gives me a sense of hope and optimism again. And I think for me, that's where Pursuit of Better comes in a lot of ways. There are a lot of solutions out there to these problems. There are a lot of good ideas, and there are a lot of good people out there. And what we have to do is take those things seriously, believe in those things, have hope in those things. I mean, there's a lot of talk that one of the strategies from the fossil fuel industry and a lot of the biggest polluters out there is to kind of spread a lot of negative information to basically but if we don't really want to push back against these things because we're just sad and depressed and we feel so awful. If we don't really want to, then we just keep going about our ways. We don't change things. We don't believe in change. We don't believe in hope. We don't want to make a change. We're so sad and depressed, and we've given up to the extent that we're still alive and we're still consuming things. We're still buying things, but we haven't really given up on life. And that's good for business, right? Because we just eat more, we consume more, we medicate ourselves, whether that's with sugar, sweets, all sorts of bad things that there's industries built around. But if we give up hope and we don't want to change things, that's actually good for a lot of the powers that be and a lot of the people that are making profit off of the old and often negative, polluting, bad ways of things. And if we give up hope, then they've won. So it's our opportunity to believe in change and to get back up. Even though we've fallen, to continue to get back up. I think that's what's going to make the biggest difference at the end of the day. And luckily, in the last year for me, there's been a couple big wake-up calls. I'll talk about those at some other point when I feel a bit more comfortable about it. But there's been some big wake-up calls that have reminded me again that life is what you make out of it. And we can choose to focus on, pardon my French, the shit. We can choose to focus on the shit, and we can choose to focus on the bad things and the negative things, or we can try and make the world a better place. And we can look for the good ideas, the good solutions, the opportunities that are out there to make the world a better place. Even just to smile at a stranger and to be kind, to choose to walk somewhere instead of getting in your gas guzzling car. There are things that we can do each and every day to make small impacts. And I think Singapore, that's why I'm here. I think Singapore has a lot of ideas to teach us and a lot of ideas to share with the rest of the world that hopefully can make the world a better place. And it seems at this point, we're not getting rid of these big cities, and we're not getting rid of a lot of these things that are very polluting. So we have to try and find a way, like airplanes and probably like a lot of animal products. We have to find a way to reduce our consumption as much as possible and to shift and change and find alternatives, but also find a way to lessen the impact of these things while also really shifting away from them and alternating and really finding alternatives. And I don't know enough about Singapore yet. I haven't been here long enough, but I hope that they've got some really cutting edge solutions that could lead the way to help make the planet and the future livable for all of us. So if you're up to it, please feel free to share with me your struggle with this. What's your experience been like? And yeah, I think the more that we can be open and honest and vulnerable about these things, the better. Because if we hold that all inside, it's poisonous to our soul, I think. It's good to let these things out and good to talk about them, because then we know we're not alone. We're not the only ones that are experiencing these. So thanks for being here with me today. And yeah, please feel free to share what you've been thinking or feeling about all of these topics: climate change, climate crisis, hope, hopelessness, grief, loss, sadness, depression, reality, optimism, pessimism. Please share some of your thoughts, your experiences, and looking forward to hearing from you.